Alrighty guys, if you are here today, you are here for the blueprint shader. So I'm going to go ahead and run you guys through exactly how this works and how to use my shader. So I'm super excited to show you this guys today. Right here, as you can see, I have a jet engine example, which is a great cross section here. So this shader works in many ways. First of all, it basically breaks your object down into two parts. Now you can obviously customize this completely any way you want to, but the way that this works is that there is actually a cross section area and everything is organized into folders here. And the way that it works is if you drag this along a specific axis, you can reveal or hide part of your model. So in this case, it's completely hidden. And then if I move this back along my y-axis here, you can see that I am slowly revealing the model. Now this is super powerful because you can keyframe this transition controller and you can also rotate it too. So let me show you an example right here. For example, if you want maybe just one half to be a blueprint and the other half to be solid, you can absolutely do that. At the current moment, I'm only supporting solid colors for objects, and I will be releasing a version 2 that supports fully textured, texture mapped objects. So I want to go ahead and click on the actual shader, and to do that, I'm going to click on my object here. I'm going to go ahead and go over to my material settings, and you'll see that we have a ton of awesome settings over here, some of which are a little bit tricky to get the hang of, but once you guys play around with them enough, you'll notice how amazing they are. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in real close so you guys can really see this here. So as you guys can see, our main object solid color is yellow, and you can clearly see that on the right-hand panel here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. I'm just going to desaturate that to make it white so you can understand how this is broken down. Now, the way that I set this up is so that you can actually adjust almost every single parameter. There's a few small parameters that I wasn't able to figure out yet, but they will be released in future updates. But as you guys can see, I can easily change the color of my solid surface. And as you can see, that is what I called this solid part here. Now, you'll probably notice there's a fade, right, between the actual wireframe blueprint effect and the solid color. You can also change the intensity of that. Now, right here, it's going to say blueprint fade at the top here. This is going to be a parameter that a lot of you guys are going to want to use because as you can see right now, we have a much clearer cut way to look at our transition here, which is super powerful. So you can see that right now it's more of like a clear cut between the solid color and the blueprint. And if you wanted to fade very gradually, you would of course increase that value. So that's how you guys can fade from a solid part of this object into that blueprint material. Now, the blueprint material itself is also extremely customizable. Now, the way I set this up was super clever, at least in my opinion it was, because the areas that you can see through right here, you can adjust almost every single thing that you see. For example, right now you can see almost entirely through the object, but I have this thing on the right, this parameter we can adjust called transparent color. You can actually make this any color you want. So as you can see, if I start to bring that yellow in, now any place that's transparent, you can also see that yellow coming through too. And if you want to reset this to see straight through, you just go ahead and decrease that saturation. So when it's set to solid white, you're going to be able to see straight through, right? Now you're probably noticing there's a lot of line work going on here. Now there's a lot of nodes that are running this right here, but to break it down as simply as I possibly can, there's three main detail areas. The first is going to be our main outline, and that's going to be up here where it's called outline opacity. You can see as I turn this down, it gets rid of those really clear-cut outlines that make up the majority of our 3D model. Now, the reason I did that is because I want to break this down into sections for you. The next one we're going to go over is grid opacity. You're going to see as I turn this up and I change our color of our grid lines to maybe pink, you can see the kind of detail that we can have come through our model right here. Now, the best part about the grid line is that you can actually adjust our grid density. So you can see right now we're about 26. I'll go ahead and set that to 10. And you can see we get a really interesting effect. I personally like to use white for this because I just think it looks really nice. But if you want to make the object look like it has way more geometry than it actually does, you can set this to a really high value, like 50 or so. I personally think that's a little intense, so I'm going to adjust the opacity so that it mixes in well with everything else. I think that starts to look a little bit better. Another thing we can do is we can actually adjust the triangular overlay. And what that is very similar to the grid. We can actually, and this is down here at the bottom, this triangular detail, you'll see as I increase this, we start to get this sort of almost wireframe effect on our model, which is also super, super powerful. Let me go ahead and blow my screen up for those of watching on Instagram. I'm also live streaming this, so this will be available on Instagram. Now, as I turn this back down, you notice we lose some of that detail. Now, in order to kind of bring that back, I'm actually going to raise my outline opacity back to what it was before. Again, this is all personal preference, so I want you guys to experiment with this. You're not going to get the exact same result as I am unless you use the exact same parameters with the exact same object. So just keep that in mind, guys. As you're applying this shader does work on every object, and I'm going to run you through the list of example objects that I have here. But as you can currently see, this looks fantastic, but it might not look the exact same on your model. So just keep that in mind as you're applying this. Now, another really cool thing that I have set up here is my actual material, my solid surface that I have as a part of this jet engine. We can not only adjust the color, but we can also adjust the transmission, the roughness, and the metallic. So let me just go ahead and bump up that metallic for you guys, and you can start to see how this material drastically changes. Let me turn down that roughness, and now look, we have a metallic, almost a metallic surface that looks like metal. Let me go ahead and turn this saturation down. You can see that now we have this metallic surface. And you know what? I actually want this transition to start a little bit further ahead on the jet engine. So I'm going to grab my transition controller and I'm just going to slide it on the Y-axis so that we can see more of the back of our jet engine. And I just think that looks a lot cleaner. Now, a couple of other things we're going to go over for the actual parameters of the shader are grid brightness. Now that's pretty much just the brightness of the overall grid opacity here. Now remember, you can completely turn that grid line effect off, and I just did that right there. And now as you can see, we still have a blueprint effect, but it's a little bit less intense and you can see less geometry. So I highly encourage you guys to play with all these settings because there's just so many cool things you can do. Now this main outline effect, let's say you do have a blue background like I do, and you want it to kind of mesh well with that, you could go ahead and turn that entire outline into a blue outline. There is just millions and millions of combinations, no exaggeration necessary, of what you can do with this. Let me go ahead and also show you what would happen if you turned up the transmission of our solid surface. We go ahead and turn up that roughness and lower the metallic. Notice how now we can see through our solid surface, but yet we still have the blueprint effect. This is just so powerful. Again, I'm not trying to brag here, guys, but I just think there's so much you can do with this, and I haven't seen a shader like it, which is exactly why I created this. I'm going to turn that transmission back down so that we have a nice solid surface. And I'm going to go ahead and set my solid surface back to yellow. I just think this looks really nice. It works a lot better with the design that I have. Now, a few other details. We do have a couple of mixers at the top. Now, let me go over these really quickly. Basically, the way they work is they kind of adjust the overall opacity of like the transition. So, for example, if I go ahead and slide this up, you'll notice that we kind of get a little bit more of a transparent effect. If I slide it all the way up, you'll notice we almost don't have any wireframe at all. So just be careful with this actual value. It was kind of hard to name it because at the time of testing, I wasn't really sure what it did until I messed with it a little bit further. But these are going to overall change your entire workflow of like how you play with these designs. For example, when you turn the second mixer down, you'll notice how we start to get more of a solid formation on our main object right here. So towards the front, we still have our grid line, we still have our main outline, but it starts to become a little bit more solid, which is actually really, really nice. And another thing we can do is we can adjust this transparency color. I'll adjust it to be a little bit green, just so we can start to get a little bit of green coming through there. I mean, the customization is honestly endless, and I could play with this for hours just trying to make this work. So let's see what else we have here, guys. We have the scale of the triangular detail. So let me go ahead and bring some of that triangular detail back. I'm also going to adjust this slider. Now, as you can see, we have this triangular detail coming in here. I am going to go ahead and pick my color for this. I think I'm going to do a nice yellow color. And what we can do is we can adjust the scale of this. And by that, I mean the thickness of the lines. So if you zoom out here, you can really see how we can affect like the change in the model itself. So you can see right now we have some very thick lines. If I went ahead and turn that opacity down and I brought my grid lines back, you can see that they're very overpowering. And the reason is because of their brightness and because of their color. So I'm going to go ahead and also decrease the density of these so they're a little bit more like that. And if they're too thick, you guys can also adjust the line thickness as well. It's completely customizable. You guys can literally do anything you can think of. So there is a couple of more things that I want to show you guys. Let me just make sure I covered everything right there. We have our fade. That's going to probably be arguably one of the most important things you guys do here is adjust that fade value. Now, another really cool thing about all of these parameters, if you guys are still watching this, you can animate every single one of these parameters. So you could have, for example, you could have our transparent color start out as, just kind of plain white, which is going to allow you to see straight through. Or you could even adjust this mixer and keyframe that. You could start it out as a very, very solid looking object and then immediately reveal that that grid line. And you can animate them all at the same time, so you can have multiple things changing as you go. And this will be for sale this week for those of you asking on the live stream. Let's go ahead and jump into some other cool features that I've added to this template. Now, you guys might think it just stops at this shader, but it doesn't, because I wanted you guys to have pretty much everything you need to create really, really cool renders, especially when it comes to product modeling and engineering related things, because I think that will be some of the primary use for this. So you guys know that we have our transition controller right here. Now, another really cool thing that I set up for you guys are these really awesome grid floors. Now, you guys probably might be thinking you can probably make this on your own, and you totally can if you want to. The reason I made these is because I actually have a whole folder here, a whole collection of floors you guys can use. I'm going to go ahead and uncollapse all these folders for you guys. So right now we have our classic kind of blue floor. Now this is procedural, so as you can see, I can adjust the scale very, very easily. So if you guys have a really nice macro shot you're looking for, you can then adjust the scale to fit the scene that you're building, right? Really powerful. Now, it doesn't stop there, because I also gave you guys some basic grids as well. So I'm just gonna go ahead and toggle through these for you. We have a nice black background if you're just looking for a black grid, background. We have blue. We have our green background if you're looking for something a little bit more artistic, like you're going to throw some pencils on there, maybe like a stapler, something more office related. We have white, which is of course just a classic because you can get a nice black and white render if you're looking for that. And then we have some other color choices like gray, purple, white, and of course you can change these color values to whatever you want. It really doesn't matter. It's totally up to you. Now, one of the features that I really wanted to add to this, before I go into this, you guys can see that we have this grid that's running through the middle. You're probably thinking to yourself, I really don't want that grid there. There's a way to turn that off. I actually called this the scan box. I'm going to go ahead and reveal that for you guys right now. This box right here is where that transition takes place. So this is like the exact center of where the transition from solid color to blueprint happens. Now, the best part about this is you guys can turn these, I call them scan lines, you can turn those off. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn those off. Make sure you also turn those off for render if you don't want them. Now, the reason I'm turning all this off is because I want to show you guys these backdrops that I made. Now, these backdrops face the camera. Let me turn the overlays off so that it looks like you're just facing a blueprint, right? As if you were to draw it. So I have a bunch of colors for you guys to choose from here. I have your classic black background with no lines. I have regular, that was supposed to be green, but that's black. I'll change that. We have blue, and then of course, just classic black background. Now, it doesn't stop here because I wanted to provide as much value as I possibly could for you guys. I also have custom camera angles. Let me go ahead and collapse all these. Now, the lighting for this, sorry guys if I'm talking slow here because I've just been blabbing on, but the lighting here is just an area light. You guys can use any lighting you want. This will still work in both Cycles and Eevee with the area light, but you guys can use an HDRI if you choose to do so. Let me go over some of the camera angles. And as you guys can see, everything is nice and organized up here for you, so you don't have to worry. It should be pretty darn easy to find stuff. Right now, we're on our angled view. I'm going to go ahead and switch to our side view. Now, this view is really awesome because when you start to enable these grid backgrounds, and let me go ahead and re-enable the blue one, look how cool that is. We have this awesome side view, and you can just snap to the camera, make a quick render, and you guys can have multiple sides to each object easily renderable because I have these presets for you guys. This is a top-down view. We have both sides, top-down, angled, and I even put a focus box in there if you guys want to adjust your depth of field. That's totally up to you and your personal preference. What's really cool is the other thing that you can do here in this view is you can actually grab your transition controller, which is kind of hard to see because I turned my overlays off, and you can easily fine-tune this in a different view. If it was really hard to see before, you can fine-tune that. Now, you'll notice if I take this controller and I completely drag it away from the objects, you can get a complete blueprint, right? Some of you might not want this transition, or some of you might want just a little bit of it. You can completely adjust everything. One thing I highly suggest against doing is scaling this controller. If you do, it will affect the transition, so just be careful and cautious with how you use this. I'm going to go ahead and drag it away for a second because I want to get a really nice blueprint effect in a way that I think will work great for this background. Very first thing I'm going to do is drag this slider all the way up. Now again, I'm kind of fine-tuning this in real time. This is starting to look really good, and as you guys can see, I can start to make this fit my background however I like. And a lot of you guys probably thought when you first saw the thumbnail you wanted these side views. If this is what you're looking for, go ahead and pay attention to the following parameters. Outline color, I would completely reduce that saturation. Solid surface, you can reduce that, although we can't see our solid surface right now. And triangular detail, I'm also going to reduce that to white. Now, as you guys can see, we have a, well, quote unquote, blueprint material of our top-down view of our objects. Let's go ahead and switch to our other side view. And now look at that. Look how awesome that looks. I'm sorry, but it's just so exciting because a lot of people have been waiting for something like this. I've been looking online for something like this, and I just haven't seen anything like it. So now it's available to you guys, and at what I think is an affordable price point. So it is subject to change over time depending on the demand, and I'm probably going to run a few sales along the way. So hopefully look out for that. If you guys are on a tight budget, I totally understand everybody is in their own unique situation, and I'm trying to take that into consideration. So thank you guys for your patience with that, and thank you for your patience with actually just me releasing this shader in general. But what's great is we can snap through our different views. This is a cool view because you can actually see through both of our objects. Now you're probably wondering, Kenny, what would this look like on the angled view? Let's go ahead and check it out. Oh my God, it looks fantastic. And that's because of the way that I set the shader up so that you can see straight through our objects. It just looks awesome. And if you want to bring that solidness back in, just remember, all you have to do is go and find your transition controller and go ahead and just place that wherever you like, and you can bring your solid material back in. So I'm very excited about this shader. Another thing I wanted to show you guys, it works in Eevee. A lot of you guys were hating on Eevee. That's totally cool. I'm actually a Cycles person myself, but I did want to show you guys it does work for Eevee. If I go ahead and click on Cycles here, switch that to Eevee, it works in Eevee too. It doesn't look nearly as nice in my opinion, but if you guys want to use that, that's totally fine. I encourage you to try both. I do want to do a couple test renders to show you guys how quick this thing is because it's pretty awesome. I'm using about 25 samples right now. We're running 1920 by 1920 for our dimensions. I'm just going to head over to solid view, click on render image, and let's just give this a quick second. And in about 1.38 seconds, we have ourselves a nice render here. Now you'll notice our grid lines are still in the background because I didn't turn them off for the render, so just make sure you guys turn those off if you don't want those in there. The other thing is I messed up my render settings. This is why I always like to do a test render because our grid floor is still showing, and the reason why is because if I go back to my folder or my collection up here, you can see that I still have that enabled for render. So let me go ahead and toggle that off, and let me toggle off these scan lines. Let's go ahead and do one more quick render, and we should have exactly what we're looking for. I've messed up the render settings again. Right now I have my film set to transparency, so you guys should get a nice render regardless. Let me triple check this time. There it is. All right, now we should get the render we're looking for. This is another reason why I tell people do a test render, because you don't want to go ahead and click render animation if you're not quite ready. I clearly wasn't ready because I didn't even check my settings. But as you guys can see, this is the result I was looking for. It looks awesome. Now we do have some emissive materials as a part of this shader, so you guys are going to get a little bit of bloom if you have that enabled. If you don't want that outer glow on this white part here, just turn off bloom or adjust the threshold. So don't worry about that too much. And if you're thinking it looks a little bit choppy, that can happen with a low sample count. I'm only running 25 right now. If you guys want to bump that up, that's totally fine. Let me just go ahead and quickly show you the difference we get with cycles. I'm going to run cycles at 25 samples, and for my denoising, I think I'll choose optics. You guys can do open image. To be honest, I can almost barely tell the difference each time. Optics, they say, is faster. Let's go ahead and take a look. Now, you can notice how much more crisp this is with cycles. Again, Eevee's great. Love Eevee. I have nothing against it. If you want to use Eevee, that's totally fine. I personally prefer cycles because I just feel like I get a better render almost every single time. As you guys can see, if I go ahead and zoom in, you can really see those nice details there. And again, I'm on a 4K monitor. So to be honest, this just looks incredible. I mean, this image is pretty big, but you guys can render any image size that you want. A little trick that I'll add into this demo is that if you guys do choose a larger image size, you can typically go lower samples. I know a lot of you guys are probably shaking your head right now, but just go try it and watch the result. You'll still get a really good render as long as your image size is large, but you can use a lower sample count to still achieve this. Now this looks awesome. I might even add this to the Gumroad page before I upload it. Another thing, guys, I will be eventually uploading this to Blender Market. It's a little bit harder to get something to actually launch on Blender Market. For those of you who know what I'm talking about, you know that they're very picky about what they choose to put up there, which is totally awesome because it's a great marketplace, but just keep that in mind if you guys are ever trying to sell your own stuff. This will be on Gumroad first, though, so that's the overall plan. Guys, I think I went through almost every single thing on here. Again, everything is completely organized. I do want to go over a couple of other cool models. Since we have a little bit of time left, I have about 5 minutes left until I should be done recording here. Right now we're on the jet engine. Let me go ahead and switch over to Iron Man because I just love this model and I think it's a great example of what we can do with this shader. Let me go ahead and turn off my background and I'm going to add in my advanced grid shader. I could go with blue. To be honest, I think purple could work, and I'll just adjust this procedural to red. So we'll go ahead with a red shader for this one for Iron Man. Now, what's really cool about this is I've noticed with the Iron Man helmet, it just has really nice geometry, so it works really well. And that's something I wanted to mention really quickly. If you guys are dropping your own objects into here, your own sculpts, just keep in mind you're going to want to have something with really good topology. I am not an expert modeler, but most of the models I'm using here have really good topology. They have a lot of detail in them, and they really make the shader look great because they're just good objects in general. So if you're going to add a cube to the scene or Suzanne, and I can show you what that looks like later, you're not going to get this kind of result because there's not a lot of geometry to work with, right? So subdividing can help sometimes or remeshing, but I just wanted you guys to know that. Now, one of the really cool things with this one is that I noticed with the helmet, if you just play with the settings enough, you can get something really, really cool here. And you can play with this red transparency here. Let me go ahead and make that red. We can do some really, really cool stuff here. I'm also going to increase the grid density. Actually, I'm going to turn the grid off for a second because I want you guys to see how cool this is, even without any of the grid or triangular mesh on there. So let me go ahead and show you guys with the triangular. This is our triangular, and as you zoom in, you can see that you're probably going to want to adjust that thickness. Let me go ahead and thin that out a bit. That looks pretty good. If you're looking for something like that with that level of detail, that's awesome. But me personally, I like to leave that at a kind of a minimum opacity, almost less than like 1%. And I like to bring in my grid lines because I just think they really sell the effect well. Again, this is all personal preference. This is what I think looks good. I'm going to go ahead and adjust the density here. This is the maximum density. I probably will reevaluate that in the future for more macro shots, but at the moment, I find that anything beyond this point, it either just looks bad or it's so complicated that you can't even tell it's a grid. Again, if you guys have suggestions or comments for this shader, I highly suggest that you reach out to me on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, wherever, and let me know what you'd like to see in the next update because I am just, like I said, so happy about this. I've spent hours and hours trying to make this look half decent, and I think it came out great. I'm so excited about this. Now, what's really cool is we can also adjust the grid line color to kind of go with our render a little bit. And then what we can do, let's say we want our grid line to be the main thing we see here. Well, I'll just turn off my main outline. I'll go ahead and mess with this mixer a little bit more. And right now, we have a completely just grid appearance for our object. What I did to achieve that is I made my bottom mixer go all the way to the right. Now you'll notice this top mixer will still kind of affect our shader a little bit. So just play with it until you get the result that you're looking for. If you're looking for something really simple like that, that might look nice. I'm going to swap the background and see how this looks. That looks great too. Again, this is really just up to you guys, whatever you want to do. I love playing with these settings because you just slide them back and forth and you get, and whatever result you get is going to look good almost regardless of what you do. Color combination wise, you got to be a little careful because sometimes you might run into some problems, but you want to have, I mostly like to do complementary colors. I really like the blue and yellow combination. Again, that's my personal preference, but overall guys, I think I covered almost everything here. I think that is pretty much everything about the shader. I'll go through a couple of more objects for you guys. We have our gear, our headphones. A lot of people were asking about the headphones. Let me go ahead and drag our solid color back in. The headphones are awesome. I remember I rendered these with purple settings and a lot of people loved them. Also, all of these models are available on CG Trader for free. I did not model them, so I'm not trying to take credit for them. I'm just using them as an example for this shader. We've got Mew, classic. Now you're probably wondering, well, Kenny, what if I want to fade this up and down and not left to right? The only way, sorry, not the only way. The way that you would want to do that is you would want to adjust your your transition controller, which is right here. Now, if you set it to a solid 180, it's going to look like this. And then if I click on mute, I can actually adjust my blueprint fade. Let's say I want a really solid transition, just like that. That is 100% totally achievable. And what's really cool is if we go to our camera angles, we go to our side view, you'll notice now it's a little bit easier to see where that transition actually is happening, right? Now, it's not perfectly crisp. And again, in the future, there's going to be more updates for more customization. But as you can see, this looks pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. Now, if I want him to look a little different, I can set him back to purple. I think I want to set the solid surface to something like this. I think that looks pretty good. And I'm just going to copy that color into everything else that's colored. And look at how quickly we can just easily copy these colors onto the other grid lines. I think I'm also going to choose an outline color that's just a lighter version of that purple. I think that looks pretty good. Now, you guys are probably wondering how I copied those colors. Not a lot of people know this trick, but if you just hover over the color and you copy it with the shortcut Control-C or Command-C if you're on Mac, you can just paste it right over another input and it'll just paste. So that's really nice. Let me go ahead and make this background purple. And now we have a really nice looking render very, very quickly. And you're probably wondering, does this look good in Eevee? Let's go ahead and check it out real quick. We're in cycles right now. Let's switch over to Eevee. And yeah, it looks pretty good. Now, again, you're probably going to want to adjust things in post-production. You're probably going to want to do a little bit of compositing, maybe some color management. Me personally, if I wanted this to really, really pop, I'd go all the way down here to color management. I would bump up my contrast to like a very high contrast, maybe high contrast. And then I would probably mess with my exposure from there. But a lot of people might just prefer to have that medium contrast. And that's totally fine. This is whatever you guys prefer. This is just the demo file. The file that you're going to get is going to have that jet engine. That's going to be the original shader that I have on there. But again, you guys can duplicate the shader. You can make different presets for yourself. And in the future, with future versions, I'm 100% going to create a ton of presets. Again, it's just something I haven't gotten into yet. Let me show you guys some other cool things. This is the robot dog. Now, if we go to the materials, we can actually adjust our solid surface a little bit more, maybe make it white. There's just so much customization. I have my hand, again, another cool one. You know what? That fade is way too harsh. Let's go ahead and gradually adjust that fade. So powerful. Again, I'm not bragging, just showing you guys how it works. I am very proud of it. I worked really hard on this, trying to get this to work. And to be honest, I almost never use nodes. So the fact that I was able to do this at all is kind of a miracle for me, just because I really don't mess with nodes that much. This is a great example. Let me go ahead and adjust the Z. So this example right here, I'm going to go ahead and turn our controller to 90. We could go ahead and have a product for a client, and we could just slowly reveal the wireframe like this. And I can almost guarantee you the client will be happy with the result, especially as you start messing with more of these settings here. For example, for this one, I'm going to turn up that triangular opacity just a little bit more because I actually just think it's going to look really good if we do that. All right, last thing I'm going to cover, because I'm actually running out of time here, I got something I have to do, is I'm going to go ahead and click on my transition controller. I'm going to move it on the x-axis. I'm going to jump to frame 1, insert a keyframe on that for the location, go to frame 30. I'm going to push this all the way back to like maybe halfway. And I'm going to insert a keyframe. Now you guys are probably wondering what that looks like. Let me go ahead and play that back. Boom, a little reveal for you. So you guys can animate this controller so that you guys can pretty much do whatever you want with this. It's just really powerful. Now let's say from frame 30 all the way to 60, you wanted everything to change just a little bit more. You weren't quite happy with that. You wanted just a little bit more to happen. We can absolutely do that. I'm trying to think of a good example for you guys. Let's say you didn't want that main outline anymore. Or let's say you wanted to change the grid line color to white. So I'm going to go ahead and hover over that. I'm going to press I to keyframe it, jump over to frame 45, and I'm going to change that to a nice solid white, and then hover over this again, press I. And now if we play this back, we have a purple line work for the motorcycle. And then as we jump forward to frame 45, it slowly fades into that white. So that's just one example of the, 15 plus parameters that you guys can adjust. Just trying to show you guys examples of what is capable of here. Another thing, I probably would make this metallic with a low roughness to make it appear a little bit more like a motorcycle, right? Again, you guys can do whatever you want. All right, finally, last example. Sorry about it, guys. I just forgot about this. Let me just add an HDRI in here to show you guys what this would look like, because I think a lot of you guys are really curious So this is what this would look like with an HDRI. Again, this lighting might not be ideal, and I do have my film enabled in transparency mode. So let me turn that off so you guys can see our environment. As you guys can see, the shader still works in other environments too. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to be limited to my lighting setup. I want you guys to experiment. I know I keep saying experiment, 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 but to be honest, to get the result that you're looking for, you have to. You have to do that. You can't just expect to just apply this shader and it's exactly perfect right out of the box. Yeah, it looks fantastic, but you're going to have to adjust it based on the object that you're working with, if that makes sense. So I just want to encourage you guys to experiment with these values before you decide this is not the shader for my object, because I promise you it will be if you just give it a chance. Again, I'm just going to show you a quick example of what I mean. I'm going to turn the grid opacity off here and my triangular detail off. I'm going to mess with this mixer here so that I can achieve this effect here. I'm also going to mess with my transparency color too, because I think this is going to look really cool when I'm done. Look at that. You guys see how you can adjust this now? And we can adjust the transmission of our solid surface too. You're going to want to turn the metallic down too, though. And just like that, we have a semi-transparent back part and, well, sort of a solid front part. Again, you guys can adjust the grid opacity if you want to. There's just so much flexibility with this shader. This is awesome. All right, let's go through a couple more examples here. How about our car hood? This one's awesome. I actually really like this one. This will be the last one I go over. Let me just reset my values and bring this down. So this one's really cool example, because if I split this, so split the model like that by moving my transition controller, I can then go over here, lower my transmission on the surface, bring this back to maybe like a orange kind of color, lower that roughness, raise that metallic. Oops, that's transmission. Raise that metallic, and look at that. Look how cool that looks. I think I'll bring in some triangular detail as well. And I think I'm also going to change the background. Again, I just want you guys to play around with this stuff because it's so powerful. That one's not terrible, honestly. The blue one looks pretty good on this. Anyway, I wanted you guys to be able to like plug and play this stuff. You can plug and play the shader, but I also want you guys to like work with the backgrounds, because to be honest, there's just so many to choose from, and you can completely adjust every color parameter and the actual size. You know what? This grid size isn't quite right. Let me click on that plane. And let me go ahead and scale this up a little bit. I think that looks a lot better. And this is just an example, guys. But I just wanted you guys to go ahead and be comfortable with all this stuff. This looks fantastic. And again, we can animate this. We can click on our fade level. We can fade it more. If you guys are looking for something more like that, you can do an easy reveal just by keyframing this. It's incredibly powerful. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this demo. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, any features you'd like me to add to this, I highly encourage you to reach out to me. I am not a stranger. I will definitely message you back. And I really look forward to you guys hopefully purchasing this shader and using it for your own personal projects. I'm just so excited about it. I've been working really hard on this. To be honest, there's so much more I want to add. I'm just not quite there yet. And it takes a lot of time to sort out the nodes. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this. Have a fantastic day. The link will be in the description below. If you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, please reach out to me. I will reach out back to you, and I will answer any questions that you guys have or any difficulties you're having with the shader, I promise. And I hope you guys absolutely love it as much as I do. All right, guys, have a fantastic day, and I will talk to you soon.